The air hung heavy and thick, not just with the sweltering Texas heat, but with the suffocating silence of absolute authority. How could it have come to this? Just 3 days ago, it was a simple note in a mailbox. A passive-aggressive summons from the Homeowners Association about an unapproved garden gnome. But now, a SWAT team? My husband, Leo, a man whose spine was usually as straight as a steel girder, was on his knees, his face buried in his hands, shaking. And I was standing here, holding a single, cold, brass bullet in my palm, and the whole world was watching. A single, metallic click echoed in the back of my memorized sound of the last resort. I am the president of the HOA Karens' voice, a screeching siren of self-importance, shattered the stillness. This is a gross violation of our community bylaws. You cannot just start a neighborhood-wide protest and demand a vote on the water supply. She pointed a perfectly manicured nail at the hand-painted sign I had made. It was just a small thing, really, a plea. But to her, it was a declaration of war. Her eyes, magnified by her designer glasses, were 2 points of pure, unadulterated fury. The fine for this is $4,000, and if you don't pay, we will proceed with foreclosure. Foreclosure, the word hung in the air like a death sentence. Our little house, the one we'd poured our life savings and every ounce of our hope into, was on the line. I felt a tremor run through me, not of fear, but of a deep, resonant, and dangerous resolve. What would a sane person do? I didn't know anymore. I wasn't sane, not right now. Karen's husband, Robert, a man who looked like he'd swallowed a lemon a decade ago and never recovered, stepped forward, his eyes darting nervously between his wife and the SWAT team. He was the only one who seemed to grasp the absurdity of the situation. "Karen, honey, maybe we should just let the council," he began. But her glare silenced him instantly. The SWAT commander, a stone-faced man named Captain Miller, held up a hand. "Ma'am," he said, his voice a low rumble. "We are here to maintain the peace. The court order is explicit. We will secure the property if the fines are not paid and the public gathering is not dispersed." The word gathering was a joke. It was just me, Leo, and our son, Eli, who was still weak from the contaminated water. A small, dry cough escaped Ellie's lips, and I tightened my grip on the bullet. The cold brass seemed to transfer a surge of electric courage directly into my veins. This wasn't about a fine anymore. It was about a sickness that had stolen our peace, and a woman who was more concerned with property values than human lives. A gasp from the crowd. Oh yes, there was a crowd. Silent and watching from behind police tape made me glance up. My neighbor, Maria, the gentle woman who always brought us fresh-baked cookies, was pushing through the tape, her face pale. An officer tried to stop her, but she just kept moving, her eyes locked on me. "What are you doing, Maria?" I whispered, my heart pounding in my chest. She didn't answer. Instead, she just held up her phone, displaying a text message. A single, chilling sentence flashed on the screen. "Karen's got a secret. Her sister works for the water company." She knew. She always knew. My blood ran cold. The image of Karen, the HOA president who denied our requests for water testing for months, her face a mask of self-righteous fury, suddenly looked different. It looked complicit. A shiver of pure, righteous anger coursed through me. My hands, which had been trembling, were now rock steady. My eyes met the commander's. "Captain," I said, my voice surprisingly calm, "I have one bullet, and I have a choice to make." The air thinned, and the tension ratcheted up 1,000 degrees. The SWAT team, trained for every conceivable scenario, hostage crises, armed standoffs, barricaded gunmen, was now facing a simple woman with a single, symbolic piece of ammunition. They'd never seen anything like it. Their training protocols had no entry for a bullet held in an open palm. Miller, the commander, narrowed his eyes. "Put it down, ma'am. We don't want anyone to get hurt." "Neither do I," I replied softly. "But the truth hurts more than any bullet." I held the bullet up, and the sunlight caught its polished surface, making it glint like a tiny, dangerous star. "This isn't for you, Captain. It's for the truth." A collective breath was held. The SWAT team, guns at the ready, were a wall of muscle and steel, but they were frozen. Their enemy was not a weapon, but an idea, a moral dilemma. My own resolve solidified into something hard and unbreakable. Suddenly, a new voice, a man's voice, rang out from behind the SWAT team. "She's right, you know." It was Robert, Karen's husband. He pushed past the officers, his face no longer that of a cowering spouse, but of a man finally breaking free. He looked at his wife, and the loathing in his eyes was palpable. "The fine, The foreclosure, it's all a distraction. Karen's face, a mask of pure indignation, began to crack. Robert, you shut your mouth right now, she shrieked. But he didn't. He looked at me, at Leo, at the silent crowd, and at Captain Miller. The water is contaminated because of the new treatment plant they built on the edge of town, he confessed, his voice barely a whisper. Karen's sister is a lead engineer there. She told Karen months ago that they'd rushed the construction, that there was a high likelihood of a chemical leak, and Karen knew, and she used her position on the HOA to block every attempt to test the water. A tidal wave of disbelief and rage crashed through the crowd. Whispers turned to shouts. The SWAT team, for the first time, looked completely lost. Their mission of securing a property now felt completely wrong. They were the muscle for a cover-up. Humiliation, a slow, hot blush, began to creep up Captain Miller's neck. He had followed orders, but he had been misled, used as a pawn in a petty, bureaucratic war that had turned deadly. Karen's world was collapsing around her. Her grand facade of community control and moral superiority was crumbling into dust. She looked at Robert, then at me, then at the stunned faces of her neighbors. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by a single, high-pitched wail from Eli, who was still tucked safely in my arms. I was just protecting our property values, she stammered, her voice thin and reedy, a far cry from the imperious roar of before. It was a pathetic, empty excuse. Robert just shook his head, a single, devastating tear tracing a path down his cheek. He had loved her once, but that love was now completely gone, replaced by a profound and irreversible disgust. No, Karen, he said, you were protecting yourself. You were protecting your sister. You were protecting a lie. He turned his back on her, a final, definitive gesture of abandonment. Captain Miller, his face now a deep crimson, turned to his team. He gave a single, curt nod. The SWAT team, without a word, began to lower their rifles. They had come to enforce the law, but they had found themselves on the wrong side of justice. They had come to protect property, but they had been used to hurt people. The humiliation was a palpable force, a collective acknowledgement of their terrible, unintentional complicity. I looked down at the bullet in my hand. Its purpose now completely changed. It wasn't a threat, but a symbol of a single, small act of defiance that had brought an empire of lies crashing down. It was a symbol of the truth, hard and unyielding. The crowd, now a sea of angry, determined faces, surged forward, their voices a righteous clamor. They were no longer passive spectators. They were a community, betrayed and enraged. I placed the bullet, not on the ground, but in Ellie's hand. He closed his tiny fingers round it, his small hand dwarfing the cold metal. It was a promise that we would never again be silenced. We would fight for our home, for our child, for our health. We would fight for the truth, armed with nothing more than our voices and our resolve. Karen, now a small, pathetic figure, was being led away by officers, her face a tear-streaked mask of broken pride. The sounds of the crowd, the shouts of shame and resign, were a chorus of her undoing. The SWAT team, their faces still red with shame, filed back into their armored vehicles, defeated not by an army, but by a mother with a single, compelling truth. So, what about you? In a world where the rules protect the powerful, and the truth is buried under layers of bureaucracy and greed, what would you have done? Was my choice to stand my ground, to use that one bullet as a symbol of our plight, right or wrong? I'm genuinely curious to know your thoughts.